Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Santi Gomez. I am the Global Director of Research and Programs for the Gasol Foundation. The Gasol Foundation is a non-for-profit organization dedicated to prevent pediatric obesity through the promotion of healthy lifestyles and the generation of healthy environments where children can grow healthy. So we are very happy to have you in this session today. We have a very diverse audience from different countries, from Italy, from Poland, from Latvia, from Ukraine, from Spain, from Germany, even from Mexico, and obviously from the United Kingdom, because we have Professor Sergio Lara-Bercial here with us. This webinar is in the framework of the HEAL project, an Erasmus Plus Sport project financed by the European Commission. Is a project dedicated to promote healthy lifestyles within children and young people from disadvantaged groups. And the main purpose of this project is to offer opportunities to lead healthy lifestyles by empowering grassroots sports organizations and strengthening community networks. So in the framework of this project, we are going to deliver and to offer to a wider audience 3 webinars. The first is today. And today we are going to dedicate this webinar to an important concept, an important aspect regarding lifestyles of young people. That is dropping out sports prematurely at a young age that obviously affect the level of physical activity, the social interaction, and other aspects that Professor Sergio Lara-Bercial are going to go deeper during the session. So for me, it's a great pleasure to introduce you, Sergio. Sergio is a professor of sport coaching and youth sports at Leeds Beckett University and the vice president for the International Council for Coaching Excellence, and also is co-founder of I Coach Kids project and recognized as a globally and consult for multiple high-level organizations such as the IOC, the Nike, FIFA, UEFA, and FIBA. And he also has coached basketball at all levels of the game for 30 years. So welcome, Sergio. And I know that he is going to deliver key aspects, key concepts on about how to tackle dropping out very soon sports. So it's a great pleasure to listen you, and welcome again to all the audience, and the floor is yours, Sergio.
Thank you, Santi, and thank you, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Thank you to everyone in the Gasol Foundation that has made this webinar possible, and all the project partners from the Project HEAL. It's a great pleasure to spend the afternoon with you today. Let me start by sharing my screen so you can start having a look at the presentation today. Okay, so let me just make sure that I can see you as well. Here we go. Okay, so a very ambitious title, okay? Rock, Pebbles, and Sand, the dynamic tricky mix behind youth sport dropout and how to fix it. Okay, so I hope that really ambitious title will make sense as we go along. But the first thing that I wanted to do and try to do with you is to locate you. And you're going to make me really jealous. I live in Manchester, in England. The weather is not very good, but I want you to go on the chat and tell me where you are based, where you are ringing in from today, and what the weather is like in where you are. So if people can go to the chat and tell me where they are, that'd be great. Let's have a look. Come on, tell me where you are.
Ukraine, Чернігів.
Ooh, Ukraine, Portugal, 24 degrees. Wow. I'm very jealous.
Yes. Today's the weather is so good. It was sunny.
If you can stick maybe to the chat, type it in the chat so it's easier for everybody to see each other. There you go. Italy is raining. Okay. Sorry about that. Spain, 20 degrees, Latvia, 12 degrees, Barcelona, sunny and a little bit windy. Spain, 19. Oh, Bari, south of Italy, raining. Wow. Ukraine, 15 degrees and sunny. Few more. So overall, I think it's fair to say that most people have better weather than I do, but that's okay. As we say in Spain, I'm gonna put a good face to bad weather. Okay. Okay, so let's move on with the presentation. Okay, and thank you everybody for engaging with the chat. I will be asking you as we go through the presentation to put more things on the chat. I will try and make it relatively interactive if we can. Okay. Okay, so what's the game plan for today? I'm a basketball coach, as Santi said, so we're gonna work in 4 quarters like a basketball game. So the first quarter, I'm gonna offer you a view of the global youth sport landscape, see how things are globally. In the second quarter, we're gonna tell you what we know about dropout in youth sport, what we've learned over the last few years of doing research in this area. Then we're going to give you some ideas, again, coming from our research about how to inspire the next generation of young people to come into sport and to stay in sport. And then at the end, in the fourth quarter, I'll give you some information about iCoach Kids, the global movement that we founded 10 years ago. It's actually the 10th anniversary this year, where we're trying to help coaches and clubs fix some of these problems a little bit. And then if we go into extra time, into overtime, we can have some questions at the end. Okay, so let's move on. Let's go to the first quarter. The global youth sport landscape, okay? What do we know? What's the global picture? Okay, so let me tell you, it's not a very pretty picture, okay, to start with. We have 81% of adolescents around the world not meeting the World Health Organization guidelines for physical activity of 60 minutes of physical activity every day. Okay, but that's even worse for girls. For girls, it's 84%. Okay, so that's not very good. Now, this may have consequences. Okay, if we don't do anything about this, there is an estimate that this will lead, when these young people get older, this will lead to 500 million more cases of non-communicable diseases. In other words, diseases that could be prevented through lifestyle choices, not genetic diseases, not environmental diseases, just down to our own lifestyle choices, okay? And if we don't do anything, that will actually cost us as a society $300 billion, which we would agree can go into much more or much better ideas or initiatives than just fixing people's health. Okay, if we can get this right. So we have a problem really, and we've got a little bit of a warning in the system in terms of the future of youth sport. Okay, so if we look at those levels of physical activity, okay, traditionally one of the ways in which we can encourage young people to become more active is through sport. It's not the only way, okay, but one way is through sport. So we wanted to understand if we have a problem within sport, okay? If we want to fix the problem of low physical activity, and we believe that a sport can contribute to fixing that problem, we need to understand if a sport is working for young people. So a few years ago, we did a really big study, okay, where we wanted to understand participation trends across European countries in organized sport. So organized sport is a sport that happens in clubs, through leagues, through national governing bodies, national federations. Okay, so forget the little text there. I'm going to give you some key ideas from what we found out. So we looked at 18 different sports. We looked at 5 million children from 27 countries. Okay, so 5 million children, 27 countries across 18 sports. And we found some worrying things. So the first thing is that boys outnumber girls 4-1. Okay, so girls are 4 times less likely to take part in organized sport than boys. We also saw that participation peaks between 12 and 14 years of age, and then there is a sharp decline. So a lot of children do sport until then, and then they start dropping out. And we looked at the 18 sports, and on average, they had a dropout of 40 to 70%, okay, between the ages of 8 and 18 years of age. So imagine that you're losing between 40 and 70% of your customers over a 10-year period. I always say, if this was happening to Netflix or to Amazon Prime, the CEO would be in trouble. But in sport, we tend to accept that this is normal, that children dropping out of sport is a normal thing, because more children will come into it at the bottom of the pyramid, if you want, okay? I believe that this picture, this is what sports currently looks like, okay? We've got a lot of penguins that after a while drop into the ocean, and the system, the killer whale, is eating them, okay? That's what youth sport looks like at the moment. Not very many young people manage to stay in sport, okay? There's something happening there that means that a lot of them drop off the edge, okay? So we wanted to understand why that is, okay? And that takes us to the second quarter, okay? What do we know about youth sport? We know it's happening, okay? In the previous study, we realized that there was a massive dropout, like I say, between 40 and 70%. In some sports, even 90%. So sports like swimming or gymnastics, they can reach 90%, okay? Or even in the martial arts, they can reach 80%. So there's something going on there. So we wanted to understand what. So we did another study to do precisely that, okay? So we created a new questionnaire with 49 potential factors that may lead to dropout, and we gave it to a lot of young people across 6 different countries, okay? And this is what we found out, okay? So the first thing, we found out that the majority of the dropout, as I was saying before, happens post 14 years of age, okay? So that's really important, that we need to understand that that's a critical period, that something happens at that point. We also saw, and this is really interesting because it goes against previous knowledge or previous perception, that 73% of the people that dropped out of sport actually considered themselves as sporty. They thought they were good at sport, and still they dropped out. Now, this is important because traditionally we think that only young people that don't think they are good enough, they drop out from sport, but that's not true. Even being good doesn't protect you from dropout, okay? Moreover, actually 40% of the participants that dropped out in our studies were actually dropping out from performance environments. So these guys were not just good, they were actually very good. They were in performance environments, youth football academies, basketball academies, athletics clubs. Okay, so that's an important consideration. That is, youth sport dropout is not only happening for those children that are not very good at sport, it happens to everyone. Okay, so then we gave them this questionnaire with the 49 factors, and we asked them to tell us for each of those factors if it had been an extremely important thing in dropping out or not important at all. And you know, in a 5-point scale, okay, from non-important at all to extremely important. All right, so before I give you the results, I am going to ask you for your own perceptions. So I want you to go back to the chat, and I'm going to give you 60 seconds, okay, to on the chat write down as many potential reasons for children to drop out of sport. Okay, so I'm going to put a timer on the screen, and you have to give me as many reasons as possible on the chat over the next 60 seconds. Okay, here we go. Keep them coming. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for giving me so much information. That is fantastic. All right, so you're going to recognize a lot of these, the things that you put on the chat on the findings, okay? What might be interesting is to see the order of those things, okay? So I'm going to give you the top 10. Remember, the questionnaire had 49 reasons, so we have a top 49 if you want, but I'm just going to give you the top 10. All right, so at number 10, okay, the number 10 reason was not enough playing time. Okay, so children that were not getting enough opportunities to actually play because the coaches keep them on the bench and don't give them enough playing time. Okay, at number 9, expectations and pressure from coaches. Okay, at number 8, at some point it just became not worth the effort. All the effort that you put into doing sport just didn't get enough good things back to continue. At 7, not being as good as my friends. So feeling that the people around you are better than you and in a way that you don't belong there. At 6, similar but not the same, okay? Not thinking that you're just not good enough, regardless of how you compare to other people, just feeling inside that you're not good enough, okay? At 5, and this one really breaks my heart every time I play this slide, is this. No one helped me stay, okay? So when I started considering dropping out, no one in the environment, not the coach, not anyone from the club, not my school teacher, not my parents, no one did anything to help me stay, okay? At number 4, I just simply stopped enjoying it. Something happened, okay, that made me stop enjoying it. At number 3, performance-related stress. So basically, every time I was doing sport and every time I was competing, I was getting stressed out, okay? That's number 3. At number 2, perhaps something natural. As they get older, I found other things to do, okay? Whether that was music or wanting to work or wanting to go out or anything like that. And then at number 1, and this is really sad as well, okay? The fact that they had to prioritize studies. They had to choose between doing sport or getting good grades in school. All right, so that's the top 10. Okay, it's not a pretty picture because when you look at this, okay, maybe the one thing that we don't have any control over is the idea of finding other things to do. Okay, yes, as children get older, they're going to get other interests, and some of them might be competing and against sport and lead to them coming out of a sport, okay, or at least coming out of organized sport. But when you look at all the other factors, there are factors that we could do something about, either individually as a coach or as a club or society. For example, when you look at having to prioritize studies, okay, that's a societal thing. Okay, what are we doing to our children that they have to choose between school and everything else? Okay, that's not good. Now, interestingly, and I hope this comes across clear, when they did the rating, remember the rating was from not important at all to extremely important. So none of the factors, including the top 10, including the top 3, none of them were rated on average extremely important or very important. The top 3 were rated important. Okay, so in a scale of 1 to 5, they were rated around the 3, 3.5 on average. Okay, that's an interesting thing because what that makes us think is that actually rather than just one factor being the main cause of dropout, it seems like it is an accumulation of factors, okay? And that's why we call it a dynamic, tricky mix of rocks, pebbles, and sand. So when you look at those 49 factors that we identified, the top 3 are the big rocks: studies, finding other things to do, and performance-related stress, okay? Those are things that we should try and do something about, okay? Then the next 15 or so become pebbles, smaller rocks, okay, that are important, but they're important by accumulation. So if you have a lot of those going on, it might lead to dropout. And then we've got lots of sand, okay, some factors that don't appear very important, but again, when you add up the sand, the pebbles, and maybe one rock, that leads to someone dropping out, okay? And that's the other realization, that actually dropout is a very individual phenomenon, okay? There are factors that affect everybody, but how those factors affect each individual is different. And that makes it harder, more difficult for us to help people, okay? But it means that if you're a coach, I'm a coach, right? As soon as we finish the webinar, I'm gonna go and coach basketball, okay? I really have to make an effort as a coach to see every player as an individual. And if one of my goals is to keep them in the sport, in my case in basketball, you know, what might be the key factors for this person, and how can I help this person? But that also brings me back to that number 5, helping me stay. And that's where I think coaches and clubs have a big responsibility to look at every participant and work out how they can help them. Okay. So I'm going to move on now to something interesting. That's the global finding, okay? That's for everybody. These 10 factors are the top 10 for everyone. But then we looked at what was more important for girls, okay? And we found that these 10 things were statistically significantly more important than for boys. So studies, performance-related stress, finding other things to do, no one helping me stay, not thinking that I was good enough, expectations from coaches, those 6 things that were in the top 10, okay, were also more important for girls than boys. But then there's other 4 things: having no close friends in sport, not enjoying competition, not liking how I looked when I was doing sport, and not having girls-only provision. Those 4 things that are not in the top 10 are actually very important for girls. Okay, so if we are working with girls, we also have to take all these things into account because they seem to matter more to girls. Okay, but not only that, so it doesn't just change from boys to girls. We also found that the reasons for dropout change depending on the age of the child when they drop out. So for children that dropped out between 6 and 8 years of age, okay, main reasons were low competence, so not feeling good enough, and having no friends in the group. Okay, that was the most important things for the 6 to 8-year-olds. What happened to 9 to 11-year-olds? For them, actually enjoyment was the biggest reason for dropping out. There's something happening. We are doing something to children at 9 to 10 years of age when the sport starts to become a bit more serious and more competitive, that it makes them stop enjoying it. But also at that point, no one helped them stay. Those were the 2 big reasons for the 9 to 11-year-olds. And for the 12 and 18-year-olds, perhaps no surprise, they find other things to do and they have to prioritize studies. Okay. So again, as a club, as a coach, who are you working with? If you're working with 6 to 8-year-olds, really maybe focus on the competence and the friendships if you want to keep them in the sport. If you're working with 9 to 11-year-olds, focus on enjoyment, okay, and a more individualized approach to it. And if you're working with 12 to 18-year-olds, help them manage the academic pressure so sport doesn't become a barrier, okay, and work with them on allowing them to enjoy the other things they want to do. So for example, in my case, through the season, we train on Friday nights, okay? We know the players hate training on Friday nights because they want to go out with their friends. So throughout the season, we will find Fridays that we will give them off. Okay, Every 3 Fridays, have a Friday off so you can enjoy yourself, okay? In the off season, we don't train on Fridays. Go out, enjoy yourselves, okay? So you have to work with those things as well. But then we also found some differences between countries, okay? And this is really interesting. And I think there are representatives from most of these countries in the group today. So there were some countries where studies were the biggest problem, okay? And guess who they were? Spain and France, okay? Spain and France are putting the most pressure on academics, and that's having an impact on dropout. What about performance-related stress? Okay, so this was most important in Hungary, where apparently they are putting a lot of pressure on young people in sport. What about finding other things to do? This was really important for young people in England and Germany. So England and Germany, young people, when they hit 14, 15 years of age, they want to enjoy themselves a bit more, do different things. And if a sport doesn't work with that, they will drop out. And then finally, and really interestingly, no one helped me stay was the biggest reason in Ireland. Okay, so that's interesting. So you can see how the puzzle of dropout is very, very difficult. There are different things happening all the time, right? Depending on gender, depending on age, depending on the country. Okay, so it's not an easy problem to fix. Okay, because there isn't a one size fits all solution to any of this. Okay, so there's a question there. There's a couple of questions there. I don't know. Okay, so what age is more dangerous to leave the sport regarding statistics? Yeah, so like I was saying, I think once they hit that 12, 13, 14 year of age, the transition between primary school and secondary school, and also the transition through puberty, those are very critical periods where we have to be very mindful that that's an age that we need to be especially mindful and aware. If we can get them through that, through those 2 years, if we can keep them there in those 2 years, then we have a stronger chance of them staying for longer. Okay, so something to be aware of. Please feel free to drop questions in the chat, and if we see them, we'll answer them. Okay. Okay, so we're into the third quarter. Okay, over the halfway line now. Okay, so what can we do to support young people, especially young people from Generation Z and Alpha? And I will go into the generations a little bit in a second, okay? But what can we do to help them stay in sport? Myself, I coach kids, the Gasol Foundation, the People in the Hill project, and everyone in my university, we think it's time for a paradigm change, okay? We cannot... we have to change the system. Okay, we cannot fix this system. We need a new system, if you want. Okay, so the system of sport has to move from currently sport being set up to find the next big thing, the next big player. Okay, the next Pau Gasol or the next Lamine Yamal or the next Kylian Mbappe. Okay, we have to move away from that to sport being about developing a love for physical activity for life. Okay, look at it this way. If we focus only on finding the next big player, okay, there's a massive risk that we lose everyone else. If we focus on developing a love for physical activity for life, the players are still going to come through. Okay, the elite players will still come through, but we will also keep everyone else or give everyone else a chance to stay in sport. Okay, so I think it makes a lot of sense to really try and change the paradigm. Okay, now it's difficult we call this a complex problem. Okay, because there are so many factors influencing it at so many, if you want, levels of society. Okay, so we need to probably create some key ideas to help people get behind those ideas. Okay, and that's been happening a lot in some countries, especially English-speaking countries like the UK, Ireland, Canada, the US, New Zealand, Australia, and in those countries, they've come up with the idea of physical literacy. Physical literacy as a concept of what we are trying to aim, what we're trying to give young people. Not only young people, as I will explain in a second, but really we want to set young people on a journey to achieving physical literacy. Now, traditionally, when we talk about physical literacy, or up to 10, 15 years ago, we only thought about movement competence, okay? And, we related physical literacy to being able to be agile, to agility, balance, coordination, strength, things like that, okay? Now, we've moved beyond that competence-based view of physical literacy to something different, okay? So this is what is I'm going to show you now the physical literacy statement for Sport England, which is the organization in England that looks after community and grassroots sport, okay? And they now talk about physical literacy as a relationship, the individual relationship with movement and physical activity throughout life, okay? So let's break it down. It's a personal relationship that has to be meaningful, valuable, and enjoyable. Okay, so if you think about this, is what we're trying to create for children: a personal relationship with physical activity that is meaningful, has value, intrinsic value, and enjoyment. Then we want them to experience that movement and physical activity in a way where they feel competent, so they're physically competent, but they have a series of positive feelings when they're doing that physical activity. They're also able to cognitively think about the benefits of that physical activity, and they're able through that physical activity, they can connect with other people. Okay, so that's why in the middle there, in the orange section, we talk about move, feel, think, and connect. Okay, and that is something that as a coach, for example, you can think about, okay, am I helping them become better movers? But also, am I providing them with positive feelings while they're here? Am I helping them become better thinkers about physical activity? Do they understand physical activity? And also, am I really helping them become more connected through physical activity? Because as you saw from the findings of the research that we did, that level of connection is very important, connection to the people in the environment. And then the final thing is the idea of all these we want to happen throughout life, okay? Throughout life, both in terms of, the lifespan, from being a child to an adult and an older person, but also in different aspects of your life. So not only in the sports club, we want people to be physically literate, physically active, in sport, at work, in school, in their leisure time, okay? So all of those things are important. So we have to create communities that allow for that to happen, okay? So like I say, we move from physical literacy being about just moving well to actually a relationship that evolves over time, but that helps us feel, think, connect, move throughout the lifespan, okay? So we, myself and a few colleagues from my university, wanted to explore. We say that sport could contribute to physical literacy, but there are some challenges to it. And we've seen some of those challenges already, okay? So we wanted to explore this idea of challenges. What are the challenges to physical literacy in youth sport? But also, what are the potential solutions, okay? So we published a paper last year exploring these ideas, and I'm going to take you through some of them. So what are the main challenges? This is very simple, okay? It's not rocket science. The main challenges are, how do we attract young people to sport? How do we get them in the first place? Okay? And especially in this day and age, against social constraints. So what's happening to young people at the moment? We have low stability financially, okay? We have low stability geopolitically, okay? And we have a lot of pressure on young people, climate change, COVID, okay? All these things are working against young people getting into sport, okay? On the other hand, we also have a lot of other options for them. They can get into video games, music, a lot of things they can do, going out, okay? So there's some popular entertainment. Everybody has a smartphone, everybody has a PlayStation, that are probably having an impact on their ability to go into sport. But there is also a lot around logistical issues. Do they have the finances to be able to take part in sport? Do they have the money? You know, for some people, it just comes down to that. Someone mentioned that in the chat before, financially. Sometimes it's difficult to get into sport because if your parents are working long hours, no one can take you to sport, okay? And we see a lot of that in my context here in Manchester. So all these things are working against young people getting into sport. But then the second challenge, beyond attracting them, is, okay, so imagine that we've managed to help them come into sport. The next challenge is, how do we retain them? How do we keep them there? Okay, because we've got the same problems that we have to attract them are gonna persist in keeping them. So social constraints, popular entertainment, and logistical issues. So we have to overcome those. But on top of that, then, is what we do when the children are in sport. So is our training and competition fit for purpose? Remembering that the purpose now is not to find the next big thing. The purpose now is to keep them in sport and develop their physical literacy. Develop a positive relationship for life. Okay. So those are the problems that we face. And every country faces the same problems, okay? And in every sport. So what are the solutions? Okay, so in this paper that we wrote, we propose solutions at 4 levels. One is the idea, and I will explain each of the levels in detail, okay? But clarifying and prioritizing physical literacy. Level 2, understanding young people's needs, wants, and rights in sport. Reconfiguring the sport system, resetting, okay? And then support and education for sport stakeholders, clubs, federations, parents, coaches. So let me go into this a bit more in detail. So what do we mean by clarifying and prioritizing physical literacy? So very simple. If we want physical literacy to be the goal or the objective of the sport system, of the youth sport system, first we have to define it. And that's what they've done in England with that physical literacy definition, okay? And they've done the same in Ireland, in Canada, in Australia. And those definitions are slightly different, but at least they give everyone something to aim for. Then we have to sell it. We have to sell the benefits of physical literacy. So as you're doing with the HEAL project, the health benefits of physical activity, the community benefits of physical activity, the academic benefits of physical activity and physical literacy. Okay, we have to be able to sell. We have to do a marketing job on this. And then we have to target it. We have to create programs that are really aimed at that. Okay, that the youth sport provision that we develop has to be specifically targeted for physical literacy, not to find the next big player. Okay, which is what the system is doing at the moment. Okay, so what about the second element, the idea of understanding young people's needs, wants, and rights? Far too long, okay, for far too long, sport and coaching is something that we've done to children, okay? Not something that we have done with children or for children. We impose adult principles and adult expectations of sport into young people. So we have to stop doing that. We have to really focus on what young people need, okay? What are the needs? Sport for a 9-year-old is not the same as a sport for a 35-year-old or a 51-year-old, like in my case, okay? It's very different. But also it's not only about how those needs change as people grow and mature. Do we actually know what young people want from sport, okay? Do we know why they want to do sport, okay? Or are we still stuck in that paradigm of wanting to compete and wanting to be the next big thing? okay? Because that's not the case for most young people. This becomes really interesting when we look at the generational gap, okay? So very quickly, go on the chat and tell me which generation, if you don't mind, okay, which generation you belong to, okay? Are you a baby boomer? Are you a Gen X? I'm a Gen X, okay? I was born in 75. Millennials, X. Oh, you're making me feel so old. There's only myself and another X so far. Okay. All right, so it's fair to assume that most of us are either X, millennials, or maybe some older Gen Zs, okay? But we're all coaching young Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, okay? And the world they have experienced and the world they've grown into is very different to the world we grew up in, okay? My world of, my formative years were in the late 80s, okay? Or mid 80s to late 80s. That's a very different world, okay? To the world of my own children. I've got a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old, or the children that I coach who are 14 years of age, okay? So we have to make an effort to understand how they see the world and what they want from sport and what they want from the people that deliver sport to them, okay? So we need to really, like, some of the things, give me some ideas on the chat about what are the characteristics of Gen Z and Gen Alpha young people. You know, what do we know about them? How are they different to us? Okay, what can you tell? Thank you, Laura, for the young at heart comment. Now, give me some ideas on the chat. How are children born in the early 2000s different to us born in the 70s, 80s, or 90s? Into social media, thank you. I'm really happy that I was able to work out that SM means social media, okay? Okay, they got a lot of choices, competing priorities and interests. Keep going, keep them coming. Yeah. What else do we know? Short time, yeah. They have a short span of concentration, more demanding studies, porn addiction, okay, absolutely. Lack of interest in competition, yeah, 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 absolutely. I'm there with you, Spartaco. If I could do 7 hours, I would do 7 hours, not 5. We didn't have anything else to do, really. They have little patience, less freedom and independence, absolutely. Okay, parents don't like letting them play outside. Okay. All right. Okay, so they are a bit different, okay? So they are digital natives. They have been born with technology. Okay, but let me say something. None of the things that I'm going to say here are their fault. Okay? This is what society has contributed to this. Okay, the same way that my generation is a particular way, that's not my fault. That's the way we were brought up, okay, or the way society was at that time. So I'm not trying to blame young people, and I really want you to get away from that idea of these kids are worse than we were because our parents said the same thing about us, okay? So this is not about blaming them. It's about understanding them and working with them, okay, and actually learning from them. Okay, they know technology. They're actually quite emotionally intelligent. They can verbalize feelings much better than my generation could, okay? Because actually it wasn't acceptable in my generation to verbalize your feelings. They are more tolerant of diversity than we were, okay? So there's a lot of good things going on for them. But they do have shorter attention spans, sometimes lower self-confidence because they've been exposed to this social media culture that is constantly judging you, okay? And sometimes a sense of entitlement, of expecting things to be easy, okay, or in a particular way. So meeting the needs of all these people can be challenging for people from other generations. Because like I say, there's like a generational clash, okay? But I think we have to really work with them to understand them, to learn from them, and to meet somewhere in the middle, or if it needs be, okay? So some ideas here. So if they are very influenced by technology and the digital world, can we incorporate some of that into our activities, into our coaching? Can we gamify some of the things that we do? So even in my coaching sessions, I gamify the sessions to make them, I use the language of video games. I use challenges like in video games because that's what they're used to, okay? They have short attention spans. All right, so let's be clear, concise. Let's have shorter tasks, shorter instructions, okay? They have low self-confidence. So let's give them plenty of opportunities to feel good about themselves. Okay, remember, like we don't have to, very few young people will become elite athletes, okay? But everyone should have a good experience. They celebrate diversity, they understand it. Let's make sure that we celebrate difference in our groups, at any level, difference of ability, difference of whatever, okay? Let's celebrate it. And they are at risk of dropping out because of the choice they have. So make it fun, reduce performance anxiety, reduce related pressures, and prioritize their voice, okay? Which takes me to the next thing, really, okay? That all of this is not really actually nice to do. You know, the fact that we want to understand young people and give them a voice, it's actually a right of young people. I don't know if you're aware, but there is something called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, okay? Children have rights. So the things that I've been talking about, they're not nice things to do. They're actually rights. You know, they have a right to these things, okay? So, for example, if I go to the to some of these elements, right number three, every adult should always act in the best interest of the child. Okay, could we honestly say that in sport we're always acting in the best interest of the child? Not always. For example, number 12, adults need to respect children's views. We have to listen to them and understand them. Do we listen to the children's views very often in sport? Not at all, okay? 31, children have a right to play. But do we let them play? Do we assume that because they're in sport, they're playing? Or are we forcing them to go through drills and activities that are really boring? And that's not really what they think about play, okay? So again, we need to think about these things, all right? Point number 3, like we have to then, if we believe in everything that we've been saying so far, for change to happen, we have to reconfigure the sport system. So we might have to review and rewrite some of the policies that we have around sport or around education, okay, if we want to have an impact. We may have to then change the way we deliver sport, scale it and tailor it to the needs of children. So from something as simple as, if you are, like in basketball, for example, if you are below 11 years of age, you will play on a lower basket, okay, to make it easier for you, okay, to more advanced things like, for example, again, and I'm going to give you another example from basketball because it's what I know best, the 3x3, which is a version of basketball that is much more oriented to youth, that can be played without adults interfering, okay, sometimes without referees, okay, something that fits their goals. Or the fact that we need to design to include, when we design clubs, sessions, seasons, programs, are we thinking about inclusion or are we being exclusive in our design? Okay. And the same with our competitions. Are our competitions adapting to the needs of young people? Some young people still like the idea of being in a league for 9 months a year. Okay. For some young people, that's completely unrealistic. They don't want to commit to 9 months of a league, but they would love to do a festival every month. They would look to get together once a week, okay? So we need to be more creative in how we offer sport to young people, okay? And finally, okay, we need to then, if we want system change, we need to educate the people that deliver the system, okay? So we need to support clubs and schools, understand what this change means, but also importantly, understand the benefits to them, okay? So clubs may complain that we are changing sport, okay? But actually we are helping them recruit more people for their club. Okay, they need to understand that this is not about dropping everything they've done for the last 100 years. It's about continuing to do some of that, but doing also some new things to help more people come into the sport. We also have to support coaches, teachers, and officials, because they are the front line. They are the people delivering. And most importantly, we have to work with parents and guardians to support this change process, because sometimes parents can be an added source of stress for young people in sport. And actually, in some of the studies, we've seen that for some people, it becomes the main reason why they drop out of sport. Okay, so we have to support them. Okay, so that take me, and I'm 2 minutes away from finishing, and then you can ask more questions. Takes me to iCoach Kids. Okay, so we realized we had a problem in sport over 10 years ago, and we wanted to create a free platform and a free program and movement that supported people that work in sport, coaches, parents, clubs, to create a better landscape for young people in sport. So this is what we did. Okay, I'm going to play you a video. It's a 1-minute video that gives you an overview of iCoach Kids, and I hope you can hear it.
This is my time, this is my moment. You better bet that I'm on it. Ready and set, I'ma own it. Blast it to 10, then keep going. There ain't no coasting, I never settle, don't play. Putting the kettle to flame. I go 100 all day. Foot on the pedal, no brakes. 10, 9, paid all my dues, waited in line. 8, 7, now it's about time that I take mine. 6, 5, king of the jungle, heart of a lion. 4, 3, 2, 1, watch out, here I come. This is my time, I'm on the rise. Can't hold me down, I'm too fly. This is my time, ready to shine, brighter than all of the lights. Cause when it's game time, seconds away and the game's on the line. There ain't no doubt in my mind, beating the buzzer like. Cause when it's game time, seconds away and the game's on the line. There ain't no doubt in my mind, beating the buzzer like. This is my time. This is my time.
Okay, so you've seen all this in the video. We're just trying to make sport a better place for young people. Okay, and we're trying to support the people that have to do that, like coaches, like clubs. I would really encourage you to. I'm gonna skip through that quickly, but I would really encourage you to go on our website, icoachkids.org. I'm very confident that you will find something useful there. But if you don't, then let us know and we will produce it for you. Okay, we have a great team working with us. We also have 22 micro e-learning courses that are completely free. Everything is completely free. And we post a lot on social media. So that's all I had to give you. But before you ask questions, I'm very curious to see what you've taken away from this today. Okay, so I wonder if on the chat, just give me maybe just one takeaway that you've taken that you think was interesting from, or something that you can implement, or something that you can take back to your contest. Okay, so if you go on the chat, just give me an idea of what was useful about the last 45 minutes. Help me out a little bit, please. While people write things up, maybe Spartaco, you have your hand up. Maybe you want to say something?
Listen me? Hi, Sergio.
Hi.
Hi. First of all, let me say that we don't see each other since from the last cluster sport meeting in Brussels.
I know.
Long time, 2018, because we was there. And from until now, I have appreciated your intervention, because you confirmed the person that you are, and most of the things that you share with us effectively have inspired us. I represent the Margherita Sport Vita. I'm a sport club, basketball sport club, and I'm full partner of the HEAL project. I'm proud to be part of this project with my colleagues, because like you know well, this project was oriented for support the direction of dropout of the kids, especially with specific topic. And most of the topic you mentioned was really, I personally appreciate. I want to make a consideration and what I bring at the end of this meeting with you together. The consideration that there are a lot of lack in our society. Before we have introduced now with your question, how many of us consider the lack of this situation? The guys are changing. Now there is the technology. When I said before that in our era, I was former basketball player, there was just ball for me, 5 hours, 4 days training, and the Friday was when we was together, the friends of the teams. Now the things are changing. So what I bring at home after this consideration, I think that respect that so much European project that most of us know works, I think that we don't continue to recover this lack, because even if we can consider a lot of best practices from this European project, that are the most strong connection, I think that we have a big lack within political decision, sport federation, the family, and all these words are not connected with the real life. That's why I think that in our small space, we continue to believe in what to do. But in my opinion, if we don't change, you mentioned before one of the points where we need to change the macro system. We need to change the system of the sport. And effectively, the sport club, there are different levels of sport club. There are sport clubs like grassroots, like me, but there are the Milan, Inter, or Real Madrid. They have sport club, but with other ambitions. So that's why I continue to bring at home the knowledge that we are working in the right direction, like you mentioned. But in my opinion, until when the minds of those people that are decision lead don't change the mechanism, we will continue to increase this lack between macro world like family, parents, kids, sport clubs, sport federation. Thanks.
Thank you, Spartaco, and great to see you again. I think you've hit the nail on the head a little bit in the sense of I don't want to give the impression that solving the problem is easy. Okay, I think identifying the factors that are causing it and some potential solutions is easy. The implementation is not easy, because it is like I was saying, it's a complex problem with multiple things, right? And in a current societal moment in time where this thing is not a priority for anybody. Okay, the priorities are everywhere else. We've got war, we've got financial crisis, we've got sport is not really a sport, and physical activity are down the priority list. Okay, so I don't expect governments to jump onto this really quickly. Okay, I think the sport community, we have to take some responsibility at this point, without losing sight that we need to try and influence up eventually. Okay, and things will get better. I'm a big believer in that. Things will get better. But yeah, we have to. I love what you said. And I'm a great believer in this. We have to look at the big picture, but then we also have to see about what can I do in my own environment. Okay, when I finish the call and I go to my basketball club, what can I do? Okay, and really, if we all try to do that, and we've given you some data today that might help you clarify what you can do individually to improve the situation, that's probably where we need to start. Yeah. I think I can't pronounce your name because it's in Cyrillic, but I think Maria or Marika had a question.
My name is Nadia. I'm really glad to meet you. I'm from Ukraine, from the Kropivnitsky, the center of Ukraine. And I have a couple of questions, and I really appreciate the piece of advice of you, because you're a world-known coach. So the first question is, what 3 things can a coach start doing tomorrow to reduce the dropout of children, especially Ukrainian, because the situation is different, you know, in our country. And it's very important to know for me and to tell to my coaches, because I represent youth and sports department of Kropyvnytsky City Council. And I want to tell to our coaches the information that you give us today. Thank you in advance for your answer.
Thank you, Nadia. And yeah, it's a great question. Look, I always come down to one thing. So you've asked me for 3, okay? And I'm going to give you one that you could do 3 times if you want. But you have to focus on, I'd say to the coaches, you have to focus on the child, not the sport. So I always say, I don't coach basketball. I coach children, and basketball is my tool, my vehicle, okay? And the biggest thing they can do to help them stay in sport is to build a positive relationship with the child. So the child wants to come to the session, not because they want to play basketball, but because they are happy there. They trust the person that is leading that session. And then the second thing would be then really spend a lot of time helping them become connected between them. So the child will come to the session because they want to see their friends, not because it's a sports session. The sport becomes just an excuse, but they want to be there because they trust the person that is delivering the activity, and they love the other children in the environment. So that would be, you asked me for a third one, okay? So the third one would be, we have to make sure that when we are coaching, we find opportunities to make sure that every child feels that they are learning something or improving something. So build a relationship with the children, build a relationship between the children, and then help them feel like they are improving, that they're getting better at something, okay? That would be the top 3 for me. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think that this issue is very important, Professor Sergio. Thank you so much for being with us today. As Gasol Foundation, we fully support this children's rights approach. We fully support focus on children, on their social interaction, and make positive every single interaction that they have with adults, with other children, because finally this will build their resilience, their self-efficacy, and other key aspects to fully develop. So thank you very much for highlighting this children's rights approach. As Gasol Foundation, we are working very hard to guarantee the right to be free from the very beginning of human lives, for being free from economic, social pressures that try to promote non-healthy lifestyles. So thank you so much for highlighting this. I also should be grateful with all the HEAL project partners. HEAL, the name of the HEAL project is Healthy, Accessible Lifestyle for All. Obviously, the subject that today you discussed is very important to guarantee this healthy, accessible lifestyle for all. And I would highlight the name of our partners: Margherita Sport e Vita from Italy, also GIA, Cooperativa Sociale, also from Italy, iSports from Poland, the University of Latvia, and also the National Olympic Committee of Ukraine. And obviously, thanks to the European Commission that through the European Union Program for Education, Training, Youth and Sport is supporting this webinar and the full HEAL project. So thank you very much, Sergio. Very inspiring. We were taking notes and for sure we are going to apply all your recommendations in our daily practice.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Thank you for the invitation.